Alright, I'm back once again to further diminish the quality of my oeuvre. So there's this new game that's come out, Mosa, Lina. It's this very simulation-driven puzzle platformer with emergent gameplay, and it's pitched as a hostile take on the immersive sim. So if you're normal, that should mean nothing to you, but I trust that we're all freaks here. But what is an immersive sim? Just kidding. Check out Wikipedia. I don't want to get distracted talking about genre and stuff. I want to actually just focus on the thing that I'm talking about for once. The important thing is this game rocks. The idea is you get a set of randomly picked levels, a set of randomly picked tools, and then you have to tackle each level with a subset of randomly picked tools. So it's a bunch of puzzles, but none of the puzzles actually have a correct answer. They're all solvable, but there's no bespoke, predetermined, exact solution. So there's like a constant sense of discovery and reward and skill progression. The gameplay is super fresh and messy, but the actual design of it feels very lean and precise. It's a very enjoyable game, but it's not doing any tricks to make it seem enjoyable. It's like entirely based on your internal feelings of reward, feeling pleased about yourself for your own creativity, which is where it starts to riff on the immersive sim. I don't want to get too bogged down talking about genre, but it's a hostile take on the immersive sim. Partly, it's hostile to the player. It's a player-hostile game. It's a bit of an obtuse game where everything is sort of unexplained. You learn the systems through failing, and you fail a lot, or at least I do. Please don't comment that you didn't fail a lot, okay? I'm very personally invested in my skill at video games. On the flip side of that, you know, it's chill and nice, but it is more obtuse than a lot of games. Now, it's partly hostile to the genre of the immersive sim, right? It doesn't really fit into that genre. It doesn't use the conventions of the genre, which, depending on how much of a stickler you are about that sort of thing, maybe makes it not even part of that genre. But I would argue it's not trying to be an immersive sim, it's largely trying to be hostile to the idea of an immersive sim. So what is an immersive sim? It's really easy to define, actually. The only trouble is forcing everyone to agree with you. The immersive sim purists would have it that an immersive sim is when there's stackable boxes, there's a vent you can crawl through, and there's a keypad beside a door that opens with the code 0451. But the immersive sim heterodoxy, whatever. The immersive sim heterodoxy would say that it's just when there's like one example of some simulation-based emergent gameplay in there somewhere. So, you know, it can be an immersive sim, whether it's just like there's some physics stuff going on, like the new Zelda games, or if there's absolutely every hallmark of the genre, like Starfield. It's basically a genre, you know? You know how genres work? You know how genres work. If I say a superhero movie, right, you know what that is. Costume guy, villain, big fight at the end, big fight in the middle actually. Doesn't even really need to be said. It's action, adventure. If it's made in the past 10 years, it's trying to be funny, and also there'll be some half-hearted attempt to make it part of a different genre. And that is for marketing. Marvel insists that each one of their movies is part of a subgenre that it definitely isn't, in an attempt to target an otherwise disinterested demographic. And that's what genres are, sort of audience targeting. And these genre categories are built around what people expect out of them. Everyone can identify some common stuff that's going to happen in this thing. People like a thing, people gravitate towards a thing, there's a word that comes out of that, and then like executives or whatever point to that word and go, oh, can we get some of that stuff? And most stuff, you'll use like a combination of genre labels to try and categorize it for people quickly. I did it earlier. We can cut to a clip. It's this very simulation-driven puzzle platformer with emergent gameplay. Wow, okay, that's how genre works. So the genre gets sort of organically defined by a mass of people, and it also defines that mass of people, right? Immersive sims are enjoyed by annoying gamers who are in too deep. And then that definition sort of goes both ways. The genre gets changed based on what the audience expects, right? You see that, again, obviously with superhero movies, right? Every one of these superhero movies that comes out, yeah, they all follow a pretty similar formula because that's what we expect. But they all try to do some things that subvert what we expect. So that's why they're all comedies now. That was a subversive twist, but it's a subversive twist that we've come to expect. Ooh, I wonder if the villain will have a bit of a point, actually. You know, so genres sort of morph over time to fold in the subversions that work. So it just doesn't matter what any one person thinks a genre is. You fundamentally, you can't dictate it to people, which is very annoying. Like, I think an immersive sim is just when a game is good and I like it, but I'm having some trouble getting everyone to agree with me. But immersive sim as a label has actually come out of the design side of things, which happens sometimes with genre, right? Like an indie movie or a sitcom, they have their origins slightly less based on what an audience thinks about a thing and more about what the people creating the thing had to do to create the thing, but then, you know, over time it shifts, whatever. What the fuck, who gives a shit? Like, it comes from one of the ideas in the design of Ultimate Underworld, which was to give away control to the player, to let things happen that were unplanned by the developer, to try and add a bit of genuine, spontaneous life into the world. And it was inspired by simulation games and tabletop games. The idea being to immerse the player using simulation elements. Yeah, I know, I can't believe I'm doing this. So especially at the time, games that were designed with this sort of philosophy behind them had a lot more player agency and a lot more player expression. Really sort of specifically, I think, and this is a personal take here, so if you want to isolate this bit and get mad about it, they're games that don't require you to think, what am I supposed to do here? You just do what you want to do, and it works within the rules of the world, right? They often have consistent rules, a consistent game world, and really they're games where cheesing the game systems has just been made an explicit part of the game world. You know, stacking boxes, crawling through vents. So what is an immersive sim? It is one of these specific definitions that people get quite heated about. So I just shouldn't say immersive sim. I just mean what everyone means, which is it's a game that's a bit like Dishonored. Or if you're old, it's a bit like Deus Ex. Now my thing is, despite the general definition being all about immersion and emergence and simulation, these games aren't the most immersive or emergent or simulative. You know, like sandboxes can be more emergent, walking sims can be more immersive, flight simulators can be more simulative. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say sandboxes, I just mean a game that's a bit like Minecraft. And I shouldn't say walking sims, I just mean a game that's a bit like Firewatch. And I shouldn't say flight simulators, I just mean a game that's a bit like Microsoft Flight Simulator. The emergent simulation part of immersive sims was like what was novel about the genre when the genre started out. The fact that you could climb walls using mines in Deus Ex, or you could use the cargo lifts in System Shock 2 to crush robots, but there aren't really like a ton of crazy examples outside of that. Immersive sims were probably on the cutting edge of simulative emergent gameplay, but they're not anymore. Immersive sim design has always been like, you need to get into a building, so you have a tool that will let you go in through the roof, and you have a tool that will let you lockpick the back door, and you have a tool that will let you shoot everyone in the face. So it caters to all different player play styles, and maybe you can do wacky bullshit with the tools, combine things in interesting ways. So there you go, that's player agency and emergence. But it's not really, is it? You often have that feeling of coming up with a plan on your own, using the logic of the game world and executing it. But not because it's a raw simulation, only because the developers explicitly factored in you doing that and probably prodded you towards doing that. And these games play much more like a Metroidvania. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say Metroidvania. I just mean a game that's a bit like Metroid. But, you know, you come across tools that open different locks, you go through a pretty linear progression and follow a pretty linear path through a linear story. Prey is probably one of the worst offenders there. There's a lot that's arbitrarily gated. There is sort of a linear progression. Of course, there's a lot of really cool emergent stuff. You can use the glue gun to climb up walls. You can get to areas early. Like, on my first playthrough, climbed my way up into Alex's office before you're supposed to be there. And the game factors that in. Or the Nerf gun lets you shoot screens and unlock doors, or you can get through the combat by throwing flammable items around. The game allows you to do a lot, but every one of those moments is planned for, and the entire game can be completed without weapons or upgrades, so there's always a fallback. So in terms of design, modern arcane games haven't really moved that far away from the original immersive Sims, but in terms of the marketing promise that the genre label offers, you know, they're not trying to realize a complete simulation. It's not going for truly unique player-created moments. They are trying to craft specific gameplay experiences that feel immersive and feel emergent, even though it's a trick. Is that any different to the System Shocks? No. But the dream promised by the marketing of the label immersive sim was never fulfilled. So, mosa, lina, which is what this video is about. mosa, lina takes that core idea, that dream of the immersive sim, and explores it literally. There should be no-win scenarios. You should end up forced to use all the tools. It should be hostile and always truly emergent. It's also obviously not doing a lot of the other things that the genre does, but that's not the point. The point, I think, is to interrogate this idea, this dream. And mosa, lina really fucking works as a game. It can have that aggressive randomness, that player hostility. Every single puzzle solution does feel like you're getting away with something that you're not supposed to, that isn't planned for, because it probably isn't explicitly planned for. You're combining things in a certain way that has never been done before. In the interstitial area of the game, you can get a hint that's like, sometimes there's going to be no solution, sometimes you should just completely re-roll, which I'm sure that's true in like a monkeys and typewriters sense. And I've definitely just given up on a set and re-rolled myself, but I feel like they're always solvable somehow. All the levels are very intentionally designed and well tested, and all the tools do something useful. There's always some chance of you pulling off some insane bullshit that might work, because while explicit puzzle solutions weren't necessarily set up, it is still a functional, enjoyable game. And true hostile randomness and accurate simulation with no-win scenarios wouldn't be that, because it plays quite easily. You know, it's sort of simple, but a lot is going on to make it so simple, right? The fact that the levels are all explicitly designed, the tools all always do exactly the same thing, the fact that it works in sets of levels with subsets of tools, with this really quick restart loop. It reminds me of Cruelty Squad, right? It's more player hostile than usual. It's playing with immersive sim ideas, and I think they both make a case for the widespread adoption of their own design. And I love these games, and I love the design of these games, and I think they can and will be learned from, but I'm not sure how broadly they apply. In a lot of ways, the thing that makes this game work is the specific design of this game. The fact that there is a consistent thrust and human craft and care behind all of the levels, all of the tools. Everything feels exactingly tuned. They're not puzzles that were designed with a specific answer in mind, but they were probably puzzles that had to be play tested to fuck to figure out if they actually functioned with the tools that were available. It works because of what it does as an indie game, because of its idiosyncrasies. And this is like what I hope to get out of an indie game. It's doing things that you don't see anywhere else. mosa, lina works because it's so lean, because it's so frictionless, because it has that roguelike loop. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say roguelike, I just mean a gameplay loop that's a bit like the gameplay loop of Rogue. It is like Cruelty Squad. It can afford to be an unusually obtuse, player-hostile game that doesn't really explain anything to you, lets you solve things through experimentation because it's so fast. It's not irritating because the fun is in the gameplay. It's not irritating because it's small, and it has the stakes of a Souls-like. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say Souls-like, I just mean a game that's a bit like a Souls game. But you know, it requires reasonably high skill, and death is so common. It's so common that the stakes of death are actually low, and it plays as whimsy. Every failure in here, it's like you've come up with some elaborate plan and you've placed physics objects all around and you can see in your head exactly what you're going to do. But then it turns out you've created a slapstick death for yourself. So I would argue mosa, lina is good at what it does because it is what it is. The immersive sim has been a really troubled genre. These are games that most people bounce off. I think because of audience expectation, immersive sims can typically be categorized as first-person shooters. The problem is, if you jump into an immersive sim and try to play it like a first-person shooter, you're going to have a bad time. It's not a fun way to play them. And that's why genre is useful. There you go, callback, fuck off. One of the innovations in the genre that we've seen recently is trying to solve that. The Moon Crash DLC really broke down what you could do and couldn't do. It wasn't afraid to give you dead ends. And with the benefit of that roguelike loop, that game, to me, was the one that the most organically showcased what an immersive sim could do. You don't stick to a playstyle. You get to be, and you have to be, genuinely improvisational and creative. You get to have multiple experiences going through the game through different ways, with the multiple characters showcasing different playstyles in a way that is built into the game, making like what would otherwise be a metagame experience where you maybe just feel like looking around and seeing what the other pathways could have been, or you reload a save and go back and do it again, making that into the actual game experience. An immersive sim, played straight, can't necessarily force you into dead ends or unwinnable scenarios. But if you make the gameplay loop faster and built around that idea, then you can get away with it. But of course, I would love to see more varied immersive sims, and I think this mosa, lina direction is worth exploring. The question is, will anyone be around to do that now that the games industry has fell off, Arcane is dead, nothing good will ever happen again? If there was a big budget immersive sim, could it incorporate some of this design? I think it can work. I think it could work in some ways, in some areas. If you think about like puzzle rooms in games, I think this style of design is so much more engaging. But for me, the thing that I've loved about the immersive sims is the explicitly crafted experience. The fact that there is planned paths, but they're so rich and varied and the world is so well realized that it almost becomes invisible. For me, it's not about actual simulation. It's about these bespoke, handcrafted simulations that give you the feeling of it all being one big simulation. You have these moments of like, if I do this, then will that guy do that? Oh my god, he does. Or if this tool works like this, then can I use it like that? Oh my god, it works, right? It doesn't work like that because it's raw simulation. They've thought through what is a player going to do and made sure that they've allowed all that to happen. So I like this doors and keys approach. The light linearity. It's one of the big complaints about Prey, is that it does gate off areas. There is a bit of linearity to it. People go, oh, I should be able to free roam this space station from the start. But there is a narrative to it. Not a traditional linear narrative, but a lightly guided narrative through these realized worlds and bespoke simulations. You get all these quite nicely structured story arcs, but they're broken up into all little details and moments that you experience, and that is the immersion part. To me, it's not a free roam sandbox, it's a unique narrative style. There is this dream of much more grand simulation, more interconnected systems, more emergent gameplay. But I do think for me, a handcrafted, designed experience is better. As long as the design is sharp enough that for me as a player, I'm not thinking about what the paths that are predetermined are, then I don't think it matters. The thing I like about immersive sims is that that design is so broad and allows for so many different play styles that it almost becomes invisible. So I don't think emergence is the goal, and I don't think randomness is the solution. Basically, all I'm saying is, I would have loved to see more of this design in the recent Zelda games, but I'm pretty happy with what Arcane was doing in the 2010s. I think this is like, very extreme raw gameplay, and it works on that level. This gameplay is so fucking engaging. It's a game that you can dive into whenever. You can play for a little, you can play for a while. It's a game that I see myself returning to a lot, when I feel like dicking around for a little bit, because it's just fun in a way that's actually incredibly rare. It's not about scores or meta progression. There's nothing to it but the gameplay, but that gameplay on its own is just so fun. Cool. Yeah, I think this month I've got a few gamer videos planned, but then next month we'll do something else, because I'm trying to make my YouTube demographic as loose and ill-targeted as possible. Anyway, ideally you would subscribe to my website. There's weekly videos on there. I think you'd like them, and I think that's everything I had. Thanks. Love you. Bye.